Okay, my name is Ludamiro, and my presentation will be on artificial intelligence and how it is improving user experience and software development as a whole. So, what is AI? So, the dictionary definition of artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science dealing with the simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. When most people hear the word AI, they think of robots whose intellect is indistinguishable from a human's, and they're trying to take over the world and stuff like that. But it's actually a lot simpler when in software development. AI is based on the idea that computers can mimic human intelligence in order to complete a task, whether the task is simple or complex. For instance, calculators used to be considered AI, because they mimic the human intelligence of adding and multiplying numbers and stuff like that. But they are no longer considered AI because they are viewed as inherent computer functions. So, the purpose of AI. Overall, the purpose of AI should be to serve human interests and to make our lives easier. They should help us make difficult decisions, derive insights when given a vast array of data, and augment and automate the world to boost efficiency. If the goal is to design AI to be as human as possible, as designers, we must maintain a human approach to building experience that utilize AI, because the more human it is, the better the user experience will be. So the impact of AI on software development. Right now, AI is exploding in the business world and will be responsible for many of the business strategies going forward. Just a couple of facts. Around 80% of companies are investing in AI. 47% of digitally mature companies are defining AI strategies for the future and how their business will use that. And by 2021, it is estimated that AI tools will create about 2.9 trillion in business value. So it's obvious that AI is going to play a large role in the future of software development. So it is important to understand how to adjust our view of software development to include artificial intelligence. So these are just a few examples of how AI can improve user experience, selecting the cheapest flight. Users don't really want to have to scroll through pages and pages of flights to find the cheapest one that works for them. But AI could help this process by crunching all the numbers and then presenting the user with a small list of flights that would work for them. Finding the shortest travel time from point A to point B. AI can be used to analyze traffic patterns and simulate different routes instantaneously to help the user find the shortest possible travel time. Choosing the next show to stream on Netflix, for instance. The AI can analyze all the shows that you've watched, along with different attributes like how long you were watching that show, what time of the day you were watching it, and it can take all that and combine it all together to give you the most ideal recommendations. And then finally, like finding the best time to buy a concert ticket. AI can analyze the traffic of the ticket buying website and kind of figure out the prices and stuff to help suggest the optimal times and cheapest tickets for you to buy. So yeah, those are just a few examples of the way that AI can help assist user experience. So all AI can fit into one of the 5 different categories of AI. The first one is called analytic. This is AI that's responsible for risk assessment, sentiment analysis, and retroactive analysis. An example of this would be an AI whose purpose is to predict stock market values. The application can analyze and compare values of millions of different data points in order to find patterns to make an educated prediction. The next category is called functional. This includes Internet of Things solutions, robots, mechanical apparatus. An example would be manufacturing robots that are able to identify faults in a product and remove it from the assembly line. It's a lot like analytic, except instead of just giving recommendations, it will take that recommendation and then act on it. The next category is interactive. This is made up of personal assistants, chatbots, Google Home, Alexa, those little chat boxes that come up when you go on a website that help you out. That's all under interactive AI. It allows companies to automate communication without compromising interactivity. The next category is text. This is made up of natural language processing, text recognition, speech-to-text conversion. A good example of this is the voice-to-text feature on the iPhone. You can just speak directly into it, and it will write down everything that you said. It can even analyze patterns in the way you speak to increase functionality in the future. And the last category is visual. This is augmented reality, computer vision, stuff like that. A good example of it is Face ID feature on the iPhone, because it can analyze the features on your face to ensure that only you can unlock your phone. So all of these categories can be applied using some of the AI methodologies, and those are machine learning, neural networks, and deep learning. Machine learning harnesses pattern recognition and trainable algorithms to self-teach and make inferences or predictions about data. An example would be self-driving cars. They have to analyze patterns and make split-second decisions and predictions about what other drivers will be doing. The car will save that information, and it can use it the next time it's in the same situation like that. Neural networks process large array of data inputs to uncover underlying relationship or patterns. It can adapt to changing inputs and can process information in a way that's modeled after the human brain. So an example would be feeding a computer thousands of pictures of cats and dogs, and eventually the AI will be able to pick out data points that differentiate cats from dogs and make a guess whether or not a given picture is a cat or a dog. And then finally, we have deep learning. This imitates the workings of the human brain in processing data and creating patterns to influence decision making. This can be thought of as a combination of machine learning and neural networks. So an example of that would be speech recognition, because the AI can learn from the speaker and make educated guesses on what they might say in a certain situation. So just like regular applications, AI-driven applications also need to have certain heuristics that test how user-friendly it is. In order to maximize the usability of the application, it should use these heuristics as guidelines for creating the best possible user experience. So number one, first and foremost, is identify and embrace the human need. The whole point of designing AI is to make our lives easier, so we have to first figure out what is something users need that we can solve using AI. Some examples of questions we can ask ourselves are, how can AI be used to mitigate annoyances? A lot like Zeigarnik's law, users are more likely to remember the annoying parts of an application, even if 90% of the application works perfectly. But there are lots of potential in AI to remove all sorts of annoyances. The next question would be, how can AI be used to reduce cognitive load? Good UI makes the cognitive load as little as possible, which leads to users having a much easier time learning how to use an application. If there's an area where AI could reduce the amount of thinking power that the users have to use, it should be used. And then the last question would be, how can AI be used to deliver better outcomes for people? Wherever possible, AI should replace functionality that was originally carried out by users, because humans aren't perfect, and the intelligence and efficiency of AI could greatly increase the number of desirable outcomes. So an example of this would be iMessage's predictive text. So this is a feature of iOS's iMessage that will analyze the letters of the word that you're currently typing and try to guess what it might be, and then it displays its 3 best guesses. This reduces annoyance because sometimes there are words that are difficult to spell, and sometimes autocorrect can change it to a completely different word, and then you have to go back, delete it, and try again. That's just annoying. It reduces cognitive load because the user no longer has to think about how to spell a difficult word. They can just select it from the list. And it also delivers better outcomes because the time it takes to send the text is shorter, and the odds that there's a typo in the text is reduced greatly. So the next heuristic that should be observed when designing AI-driven applications is to partner with your data science team. The purpose of the data science team is to analyze and predict data that is used in an application, which is why it's important to help the data science team develop models centering around the user. Um, as stated in the first heuristic, the human need is the most important factor when designing AI. So it makes sense that in order to address the human need, you need to focus all models on the user. So a good example of models being centered around the user can be found in the popular dating app Tinder, in which users can swipe through profiles and match with other people. Originally, the algorithm that was responsible for suggesting new profiles relied heavily on the user's ELO score, which basically was a rank of every user's attractiveness and desirability. However, developers at Tinder wanted to personalize the profiles that users were shown even more, and so they looked into their data science team to help. Instead of just using attractiveness in the algorithm, data scientists also decided to factor in things like how active a user is on the app, their proximity to other users, and even what partner types a user is interested based on their previous swipes. This is a good example of why partnering with a data science team is important, because in this case, the data science team was able to identify several important factors that might increase a user's desire to use the app. Another example of centering models around the user can be found in the popular home rental service Airbnb. Originally, the algorithm that suggests Airbnb rentals to users prioritized highly rated vacation homes, but most of these homes ended up being far from the city center and away from the action. Airbnb wanted to not only suggest great places to stay for the users, but also suggest places in hip neighborhoods closer to the center of the city, so that users can get the best of the rental and the city. The data science team suggested that the algorithm prioritized locations with high densities of Airbnb bookings, because they would more often not be located in areas with lots of action. So the next heuristic is understanding the expertise and expectations of your users. So when using AI to improve user experience, you must understand the user's expertise and expectations, as well as the magnitude and decisions and outcomes. Users will expect that the AI understands everything that they're trying to accomplish within an application, so there isn't any miscommunication or misunderstanding. And repeatedly validating or exceeding expectations will cultivate a trusting relationship with your users. The more an application delivers on what it promises to do without any mishaps or errors, the more the user will rely on it and continue to use it in the future. So, for instance, if a doctor uses an AI-aided application to diagnose a lung condition, the doctor would probably want to know all of the data that went into making that decision. In this case, the AI must understand that the doctor's job is of the utmost importance, and therefore every decision it makes must be triple checked, as well as provide data for an actual human to review just in case. But if the AI aided application is meant to help you find concert tickets, a mistake in this app would be much less serious than a mistake in the previous example. While the AI should still do everything it can to complete the task, there is no need to adhere to the same quality assurance as the doctor example, because losing a few dollars is much more preferable than misdiagnosing a patient. So the next heuristic is surface transparent feedback. Consistent feedback creates an engaging and responsive user experience. No one wants to use a slow running application that sometimes feels like it freezes, or an application that doesn't give the user any feedback when performing actions. A good example of this would be when a user triggers an action to find concert tickets. A good message to add would be something like, "We're calculating the best ticket prices for you," because this is one of two things. It cultivates a trusting relationship. And the customer also knows that the AI is doing something special for them, and it's not just any normal concert ticket lookup. The feedback should also be as human as possible. If there's one thing I hate, it's when I'm calling customer service and there's that weird robotic voice that asks me a bunch of questions, and half of the time it doesn't even pick up my response correctly. No one really wants to talk to a robot because there's no connection, and this greatly reduces the user experience. This is why it's important to make it seem like an actual human is giving feedback. A perfect example of this would be anthropomorphizing a virtual assistant chatbot. Sometimes when you go to a website, you'll see a little pop-up window appear in like the corner of the screen, and there'll be like a message saying something along the lines of, like, "I'm here for you. If you have any questions, you can just ask." By making the chat look like it's being typed by a human, users are more likely to use the feature and ask questions about the site. And it's important to make the conversation as real as possible and make sure that there's a response for every question a user asks. Otherwise, the user might realize that they're not actually talking to a human and no longer want to use the feature. Heuristic is providing an avenue for alternative decisions. AI-driven decisions are sometimes faulty or may not provide the exact result a user wanted, so it's important to provide the user another way to make their own decision. For instance, if an AI-augmented application suggests the closest movie theater to you when looking for a movie, the user might want to go to a slightly further theater that is more upscale, so the application must be able to account for this. Another example would be if a navigation app finds the shortest route to a destination. Maybe the user wants to take a more scenic route that takes longer, so there should be something within the app that accounts for that. Heuristic is anticipating, mitigating, and preventing erroneous responses. So, as most software engineers know, many users are clueless as to how to use an application, and the types of user input can range all over the spectrum. If a text field is expecting a number to be inputted, the software better be able to handle every type of input on the keyboard because someone somewhere will misuse it. So, for example, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I see a chatbot on a website, I try and think of the most ridiculous thing to type in just to see what kind of error handling the chatbot has and what its programmed response is. A chatbot AI must be able to account for outlier, unwarranted responses and provide an appropriate response. It's called the AI Decision Matrix. It's a matrix I found in an article about AI, and it outlines all the different outcomes between a user and an AI-driven application. So, for instance, a true positive means that the user predicted something positive happening, and the outcome was what they were expecting, and it causes joy and delight. So, in the chatbot example, if I asked a legitimate question, I would be expecting a legitimate answer, and that's what true positive is. A false positive is when for instance, if I asked a legitimate question and I got some error response or something, and this causes confusion and dismay. A false negative would be if I typed in just something random into the chatbot, but instead I got a legitimate response, as if it thought I had asked a real question. This leads to disappointment. And then a true negative would be if I typed in something strange and it gave me an error message, and that's a true negative, and I expected that to happen. So that leads to neutral acceptance. AI can be used for choice architecture. Choice architecture is the design of different ways choices can be presented to customers and how the presentation of those choices impacts customer decision making and behavior. According to Hick's law, the more choices you present to a user, the longer it will take them to make a decision. So, an example of how AI can mitigate this is designing a concert ticket buying service that uses AI to narrow down the selection of tickets. So instead of making users search through hundreds of different tickets, you can just supply them with just a short list for them to choose from. So AI can also be used for preemptive help. AI can be used to identify user behavior that maybe indicate that they are about to quit using the application. Due to the Zeigarnik effect, users are more likely to remember incomplete tasks more than completed tasks, which leads to users remembering being frustrated more than not being frustrated. AI can be used to combat this by issuing a reassuring message that help is on the way, instead of making the user responsible for finding help themselves. AI can be used for real-time personalization. Due to the vast spectrum of users that could be using an app, AI can be used to personalize the app experience for everyone. For instance, an older user for an application may need more guidance and instruction than a younger user. Conclusion, the world is progressing fast technologically, and over time, AI will start to integrate into our daily lives more and more. Just to make you feel old, Apple's Siri was released almost a decade ago, and just think about how big of an innovation it was back then, especially in a time when many people have personal AI assistants like Amazon Alexa in their houses. It really makes you think, where will we be in another 10 years? There are many different ways that AI can be integrated into applications today, whether it's to make medical diagnoses or just recommend the best TV shows to watch. And overall, it will hopefully make using software much easier. And these are the sources that I used. And thank you for watching my presentation.